vampires in Iraq. All right, so seventh video. Seventh video. This is gonna be like 8 or 9 videos, whatever. 9 hours. It's not so big. 9 sitcoms. Again, if these are for myself, if not for anyone else. So, CIA creates the Fallujah Brigade. Oh, we get to the CIA history. Let's see what their involvement was. They've been, at the heart of our empire and imperialism since the beginning of the American. No, they haven't since World War II. Not the beginning of American empire. The beginning of American empire probably was the Spanish-American War, and us taking on the Philippine colonies, and Cuba and Puerto Rico. So the beginning of external colonies was the beginning of our official empire. You could say that Manifest Destiny was, we started with an imperial ambition from the beginning because that was the beginning of our ethnic cleansing of the Indians at our frontiers. But external colonies would be where we joined the world on the stage of empire and the age of imperialism. That all happened at the same time. But the CIA took it to another level after World War II. That would be the beginning of the suicidal lurch in our imperial ambitions. That would be, so recently I read Toynbee, what's his name? Something Toynbee. Let's see. Arnold Toynbee. Haven't read it yet, but he's on the to-do list. A Study of History, a 12-volume universal history by British historian Arnold J. Toynbee, published 1934 to 61. 19 civilizations he studied, 19 major civilizations, and then some minor ones for I think 26 total. Why they rise, why they fall. I think he's going to be my source on the data on what my context is, my historical context on my criticism of the United States and our empire and our civilization, and our one hope to save it is, Toynbee said that it's a minority, a blind minority, which ignores the existential threats, and the civilizations will fall if that minority stays in power and stays ignoring that threat, and it will be saved if a creative minority steps up to the challenge. And that's what I am trying to be a part of, a creative minority to break the hegemony of the blind minority. Both of these, though, are forms of elites. So this is, it's like, I guess, game theory of civilizations. I think that the creation of CIA was a creation of that blind minority, that vested interest without public accountability, and the culture which you can say the last couple presidents going back for 20 years, at least, maybe 15 years, but George Bush Sr. was the director of the CIA, and then George Bush Jr. was his son. Bill Clinton was governor of Arkansas when the CIA was heavily involved in possible drug smuggling through Mena, Arkansas. And then Obama, his father, or his grandfather on his mother's side, worked for the CIA, and that's why they were living in the Philippines during the time of the CIA involvement there. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 administrations, 3 presidents, 2 of them serving 8 years. 2 Bushes, 4 presidents, 6 administrations. Bush Jr., Clinton, and Obama all served 8 years, so that's 24 years right there. And then, I'm confusing myself. Yeah, Clinton, Bush Jr., and Obama all served 8 years, so that's 24 years. And then Bush Sr. served 4 years. So that's 28 years. 28 years of direct presidents with direct links to the CIA. Before that, you had Reagan, who was a propagandist during World War II. So was he CIA? Was he not? Well, he worked in the propaganda. He was in Hollywood making movies, so he was in information warfare. Propaganda came out of the PR industry, which came out of marketing science. And then before that, I'm studying up on my presidents, but 28, 32 years of this minority group in power. And then you can also say that the Republican Democrat parties are forms of minority. They're bureaucracies which have had a stranglehold on our democracy. But I'm fitting world history into the pattern that Toynbee established on how civilizations rise and fall. So our decline can be said to be following that pattern, which means that our only hope to save the decline of Western civilization and America, not the American Empire, we're going to have to give that up voluntarily, but America, just the concept of this society that seems to be unraveling around us, that relies on the creative minority. And I have to read the books to understand what he means by creative. Until then, till I have the time and space to read those books, then I'll just have to use my own interpretation of what creative means. I need to plug this in, or else it's going to die on me. So 1 minute. I'll be right back. Doing 3 hours today is a good way to get back into it. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. An intellectual marathon journey into self-discovery. And who knows how to write a book? Who knows how to do this journey that I'm doing? So I am learning as I go. And in a world of so much duplicity, and so much distrust, I'm hoping that this buys me a little bit of good faith, how I'm doing it. So hopefully you're not supposed to see that I'm wearing sweats. The reason why I put on the sweater is because it looks like I'm presentable, but from the bottom half, I'm actually wearing Laker sweats. Go Lakers. So, but from the top half, it looks like I dressed up for you guys. So now you guys know that I could be wearing boxer shorts on my bottom half. There we go. So, let's do another hour. But yeah, I'm hoping that and that's, I'm not barring it from Zen, that's just how I am, but that's what I relate to Zen so much is impromptu art, impromptu anything, just like spontaneous creation, spontaneous speaking. There's not a teleprompter in front of me, we're talking over notes, so this is all just a creation. This is also practice, so when I talk to other people about what they believe in and people just repeat what they've heard or repeat ideas, I move at a quicker pace. When I play chess, I play 5-minute games. But as I develop and as I get better and my score goes up, I'm not only learning more strategy and how to get to the spots I need and how to execute. So that's a cool thing about chess. I love the game. It's a cosmopolitan game. Goes back, 700 years maybe. It's evolved over many different countries all over Europe and the Indian subcontinent. All the different moves and all the different pieces come from all these different cultures. It's got a bunch of, chess itself is like a museum of human culture and evolution. And then on top of that, you have this amazing game of strategy and skill. People might say, well, computers can beat you. Well, I don't play computers, I play people. So chess for me is like a dialogue or a discussion. You play online and you play with other people and you it's just like saying that like computers can beat you at Fortnite or video games, so why play them? Well, you play them to interact with other people. It's a form of social interaction. Why did I bring that up? shoot, I had a point there. See, I had a point. The about my speed and you know what? Some people say that weed makes you. Some people say that weed makes you like lose your thoughts, or space cadet, or what do you, I can't even think. Lethologica is the term for when you can't think of the word that you're trying to think of. I've never forgotten the word lethologica. I've experienced that state many times, but I've never forgotten the word for that state, which I find interesting. So when you can't think of a word and you're like, what is that word? That's the state of lethologica. And that word itself, you'll probably never experience the state of lethologica about the word lethologica once you hear that word, because it's so unique and yet it describes it perfectly. But and now that just knocked out every other concept I had in my head. I was going to bring up that people say that weed makes you a little bit more spacey. What I find that it actually, if you work with it, gives you the patience to gather your thoughts. You just have to wait a little bit for your thoughts to come back. My thought was, I was bringing up chess, about how much I love chess. Not just my love for chess, but also about how I'm developing as a chess player. And I'm learning more about strategy, technique of the game, but I'm also learning that one of my skills is speed. That if you work quickly in a 5-minute game, that becomes like your moves. So not only are you outmaneuvering people, but your chess is just problem solving, like life, like what I found about business when I made money in real estate. You're paid to solve problems. So in life, really problem solving is the greatest skill set. High level interviews at tech companies, they give you examples of problem solving just for that reason. They want to know not just what you've learned in college, but how have you developed your critical thinking skills and your problem solving skills. So in chess, I'm starting to develop a technique of creating problems quickly for people. So sometimes when I'm not sure what strategy to employ, because I'm still developing my form of strategy in the beginning, middle, and end game, and I'm so stubborn, I'm trying to create my own innate strategy before I read a lot of theory. If I ever hit a real hard wall, I'll probably start reading theory, but for now, I'm trying to get to a certain skill level before I read theory of others, which is a lot of like reinventing the wheel type stuff, but hopefully I'm developing my own skill or my own way of playing. So when I play other people, I can tell that they're not really used to how I come at them. One of the ways I come at them is if I'm not really sure how to go about a campaign in the game, I'll just start creating problems and solidifying my position at a higher pace than them. And I find that that's it's like a form of arguing where you bring up more and more points, and then they have to refute them all. Asshole way of arguing, but as far as chess goes, if it's solid defense, then like I'm just working at a faster pace than them. I bring that up because as we're doing this interaction, this dialogue, that's kind of the skill that we're practicing. That all of this is off the top of the head. So all of this is just thinking and talking based off of what these words inspire, which I think is a very transparent form of sincerity. In a world in which we have so much bullshit being told to us, and I see it, there's a bunch of different examples, but that would be a whole nother series of tangents. And I think I wrapped up the last couple tangents pretty good. But in a world in which we have a lot of distrust in each other and in the government and in our social institutions and in our conveyors of information, in our authorities, official authorities and otherwise, even in, if you have like a Joe Rogan or like a podcaster, people then start, having conspiracy theories about those people when they don't do what you think they would do or what they should do. Any sort of indicators of sincerity and non-bullshit, I think, should be respected, will be respected. And this is one of them. If you could speak clearly, articulate clearly off the top of your head without any notes. I'm reading these for my own historic record and for my own processing about who I am and my identity. But I'm not just reading them. I'm also then processing them in a transparent way, which I hope comes across. And 15 minutes of digression. Let's get into this. 24:41. Where did we leave off? We have no, we're not there. CIA. I left off at the CIA. I can tell where I have a lot of emotional investment because these tangents, that's what I'm learning about this whole process. These tangents, they're the biggest, the biggest digressions are the biggest unpacking. And that's how I unpack my emotions is, it might seem like I'm not emotional, but it's because I've always lived my life pretty even keeled. It takes a lot to get me off of this, out of this gear, unless I want to be out of this gear. But if I talk a lot, then that's me processing. I'm a verbal processor, as I've been told. The CIA creates Fallujah Brigade to take over Fallujah while the Marines withdraw. They are Iraqi and former military officers. They turn on the U.S. and take with them 800 AK-47s and heavy machine gun and RPGs. Foreign fighters pour into Fallujah. It was almost like sabotaging victory. Do we have any oversight over the CIA? Do we have any accountability for doing this? Compare this, they're sabotaging the victory in Fallujah with the soldiers who we later lost, having to go back in and resecure that city. Remember, we had to do it a couple times. That was in the news. These campaigns over Fallujah. Now let's look at the CIA and their past history in Latin American countries, other countries. They have a manual basically for instigating civil wars. And then we see the same pattern happening in Iraq. That's not a betrayal of trust for the soldiers, a breaking of that contract between the soldiers and the country, that we're not going to put you in harm's way unnecessarily. There's a very different strategy and tactic that the CIA are employing as opposed to the military. And that's what I kept finding reading military history. And that the CIA were definitely not following the same script as the military, and there was a little bit of antagonism between the two. And which one is more publicly accountable? Well, the CIA has a black budget, and they lack oversight congressionally. We're supposed to, but and then we have the politicians who are all tied to them. The politicians get us in these wars. How much smoke do we need before we say that there might be a fire? We have a vacuum of leadership that refuses to acknowledge past trends, current situations, or desired future. What is our strategy? Who are we and what do we want? Perspective. U.S. public lied to, cajoled into war, and now being guilted into sending more troops. We need to assert ourselves and the truth. So these are my emotions right there when I'm reading this. Because I care so much about the CIA and secret intelligence because that was my career track. The CIA recruits out of MI. So if I had stayed in the military and I had done military intelligence with that top secret clearance, then you, after you get out, if you don't stay in, you put your resume into 3-letter agencies, the NSA, the CIA, the FBI. That's where they recruit out of, because we already got the security clearance, we have military training now, we've been trained up to a job, and now we have a language, and we know about operations and reports and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I didn't make it out of my training, but I knew that was a career path that I had stayed in. So that's one of those things that I wonder about, and that's one of those things I feel a responsibility to speak out on. Because if not but for fortune, I was very close to that path. Stopgap, mid-April 2004, of troops from the 1st ID. I think my buddy was in the 1st ID, someone that I served with in Monterey. I don't think I said that story. I don't think I said, yeah. My friend that would buy me beer when I was underage and party with me, and we'd all drink and hang out, he came into my room before he got shipped out. We both got in trouble. I was getting kicked out of the military, but he got reclassified from military intelligence to infantry. And I think they sent him to the 1st Infantry Division. I know he became a Cav Scout, and he carried the heavy 50 cal, and he went on raids and stuff, and they went to find and engage the enemy. So he went from a cush military intelligence career to infantry career, and he did a good job, and he came back physically sound, but he broke into my room. That's a whole nother story about why we could get into each other's rooms, but we had key cards where we can get into each other's rooms, part of my my craziness when I was in, and all those crazy stories that'll come out. But so he comes into my room while I'm sleeping, and he gets me in a headlock. He's drunk, and he's like, "McNerney, come fight a war with me." He's basically saying, "Come to the infantry with me. We'll go over to." No, we weren't in Iraq yet. It was 2002, so he wasn't saying come to fight a war with me, but he was saying come to the infantry with me. It'll be fun. And he's drunk, and he's trying to convince me to stay in the army and get reclassified in infantry. And by then I'd already spoken to my folks, asked them what they thought, and they were like, "We'll come out if you want to come out. You can always come back work for us." And I was like, all right. I didn't want to have my folks ashamed of me, so when they said it was cool, that's when their opinions always mattered in my life, so when they said it was cool, that's when I was like, all right, I'll get out of all this craziness. And that's when I went in front of the colonel and said, I don't know why I just keep getting in trouble. And he was like, maybe the military's not for you. So I was like, all right, maybe it's not. But that was my time to say, you know what, I'm going to be a good soldier, and I think that this MOS isn't for me, but give me a different job. And so I could have fought for the infantry. I could have fought for any job and gotten enough references. Not any, but I probably could have saved my military career. And so that was one of those things you think in your life, wow, if I had taken that path. But my buddy, who I haven't seen him in a couple of years, I need to check on him, but when he got out, we all hung out as a group, and we have a lot of stories and a lot of memories, good and bad. He broke into my room, and he got me in a headlock, and he was like, we would all wrestle, and he was a wrestler in high school too. So those are part of the things that you share. It's just physicality. I don't think he ever got beat in our company fight clubs. He would, I don't think anyone ever beat him. He was a tough guy. He's the type of guy where like you mess around with your friends, but like no one got the better of him. And he wasn't the biggest. He was just, I wrestle with people. Sometimes I get submitted. Sometimes I win. But he was the type of guy that like he never let anyone else get something on him. And that's probably served him well when he was in war, because he came back physically in one piece. But if I had taken his advice, I would have gone with him, and then I would have been stop lost. And that's why I just thought of him, because he was stop lost. So that's why I was thinking he was probably in first ID. He was stop lost, and it's already shit to be reclassified from military intelligence to infantry, because military intelligence we signed up for 5 years, 5 or 6 years. And infantry only signs up for 2 years, because it's a hard job, it's a hard MOS, and when you have a war, they're the ones out there fighting. So you only have to commit to 2 years at a time. Military intelligence, you have to commit to 5 or 6 years, because they're investing over $100,000 for your security clearance. That top secret security clearance costs a lot of money. They spoke to people, high school teachers I had, and friends I had in high school. They do a thorough investigation. They talk to people in your past. Being 18 years old, there wasn't much in my past, but they talked to people. They talked to 3 to 5 people in my past. I remember a couple friends who told me they called them up and they sat down with them. A couple teachers told me that too. So they put money in you, they need that money back. So it's one of the reasons why I've never used my GI Bill, never worried about any of my benefits, because I figure, it's a truce. I got out of the military, I don't want anything from you. You don't have to do anything from me, we're done. We're okay, because they spent money on me, which I didn't pay back. But now my buddy got reclassified. Now he has to serve 5-6 years of infantry. So it's like everyone around him only signed up for two or three. I don't know. I haven't really talked to. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. You sign up for infantry for. I know that we had the longer sign-ups, because also we got that 50,000 signing bonus. So we have to make all that money back for the military. But so he got reclassified into infantry, has to serve out an MI length enlistment in infantry, and then he gets stopgapped on top of that. So I think by the time he actually got out of the military, it was 6 or 7 years that he had to serve out. You don't think that dude was a little pissed? And he did what he was supposed to do, and he got out. And he almost convinced me to join him. And I was like kind of on the fence. How much, I asked this earlier, how much do we owe our friends? How much do we owe each other? I'm still trying to figure that out in my life. A base on the island in Tigris River, moat-like surroundings. They had internet, TVs, hot showers, soldiers saving 10 to 20,000 a year in Iraq. plus 3,000 bonus for extended duty. So that base on an island in the Tigris River sounds pretty sweet. A right blood type on the cloth of your helmet covers. Sounds like it might be important. I feel like we were falling into a trap, getting suckered into going out and provoking people into joining the insurgency. That's a quote. That's a direct quote from one of these books. I feel like we were falling into a trap, getting suckered into going out, provoking people into joining the insurgency. That's the plan, my boy. Have the lieutenant try to fight this. There's outside forces seeming to push conflict over the whole world, like two roosters armed with knives pushed towards each other. The lieutenant sees this, knows this, but his dad was a rooster, and he'll die a rooster. Have the lieutenant be Hispanic and say, "Como pollo nací, como gallo morí." That's like a chicken I was born, and like a rooster I'll die. Also have him say the quote, "If all the facts were presented before the people, there wouldn't be any war." He has faith in humanity and the goodness of the human spirit. And this is where the anarchist in me comes out, or this is the first developing of the anarchist in me. If you really get to the heart of these wars, you'll see two ignorant sides fighting each other, that both soldiers being taken advantage of by their chain of command. That's a higher burden of proof. Right now we're just talking about the Iraq War and trying to reclaim that historic record. But if you go into World War II, World War I, if you go into all the wars of these supposed civilizations, I have a feeling that you'll find this pattern repeated over and over again. Mission creep, lying to the troops about the mission, a lot of propaganda to get them riled up, a lot of profit at the top by those in power, and we're seeing that in Iraq. I feel like we're falling into the trap, getting suckered into going out, provoking people into joining the insurgency. If you don't think World War II was like that, then what did we do right after World War II? We turned on the socialists in Greece who had supported us during the war. We turned on the communists who had supported us during the war. So as soon as the official war was over, all of a sudden the true face of imperialism reared its head again. So the war was just a cover for imperialism. And the more cynical people, and I think I count among them, believe that World War II is just a war for colonies. Because that's what happened. That's where we fought it, in the colonies. And then afterwards we just went after further colonies. If not, then how do you explain the Korean War that followed it, the Vietnamese War that followed it, and the Cold War that followed it? And then Russia and the United States fighting over colonies around the world. I feel like we're falling into a trap. It's a pretty good summation. RPG Alley was groves of date palms along the road. They take fire and return hundreds more. A farmer appears out of the smoke and the dust and killed his cow. Have other soldiers and their stories in Iraq as well. Or just follow Nick. Maybe things they carried get other perspectives. Remember, just a couple years before this, I read The Things They Carried, which is a guy who served in Vietnam and had these collection of short stories. He did a really good job in that. I believe that my role as an artist is more to reclaim the historic record, but he didn't moralize, but he let you see that both sides were human in the things they carried. He didn't defend the war at all. He didn't choose like catch-22 cynical view to show the ludicrousness of it, and he wasn't heavy-handed in his morality one way or another. But if you read The Things They Carried, you definitely feel that these soldiers are human and they're losing their humanity. And then that makes you question the war. It's kind of like the thin red line too. It's like, let's not even speak about the war so much. Let's speak about the humans, and then you'll see what we're actually losing in this conflict, which is their humanity. Story. The sergeant sits on the hood of a Humvee in the dark. 12 a.m. Yeah, so this isn't a fictionalized story. There's too many details that I wouldn't have been able to invent. The sergeant sits on the, so this is real accounts. The sergeant sits on the hood of a Humvee in the dark, 12 a.m., surrounded by soldiers. We're going south, straight through RPG Alley. 99% chance we'll be hit. If they shoot, kill them. Shoot them in the fucking face. Looks at two soldiers manning 50 cals. Gunners controlled bursts. If you get hit, roll out of the way. No hero bullshit. Just squeeze the trigger and kill the fuckers. 44 vehicle convoy rolls out 2:19 a.m. Tanks, Humvees, Bradley fighting vehicles. Stryker armored vehicle. Huge portable bridges. Special trucks for carrying M1 Abrams tanks. Scheduled to take 6 hours, but can take twice as that long. KBR driver was a part of the convoy. That's just shit that happened. Above houses, black and green banners denote Shiite Iraq in area south of Baghdad, along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Land flat and farmers' fields. As soldiers refuel, some trash talk about how much they hate their ex-girlfriends. What will I have the soldiers talk about during downtime? Is this guy embedded, this guy who said this story? Because he has a lot of little details like this. Maybe he was an embedded guy. We had some embedded journalists who were like, again, this is the most controlled information flow in modern warfare. So we're even lucky we got these stories, but we definitely didn't get many independent journalism. Most of the journalism we got was from embeddeds, which means that how much can I blame Thomas Ricks or these other guys who are there? When you're embedded, even if you're trying to be objective, these guys, your life depends on them protecting your safety. So even if you're trying to stay objective, you really start, you're not going to criticize them. You're going to sympathize with them. Flares used by Iraqi fighters to signal that U.S. troops are approaching to ambush. Night vision scope on the 50 cal. These are little details to keep for the eventual story. UC-60 Black Hawk medevac helicopter flying with its lights out. Picking up injured. Birds 5 mics out means a helicopter, 5 minutes, 5 mics. I think a mic is a kilometer. But some insurgents had identification cards allowing them full access to U.S. bases. Photo then with a U.S. brigadier commander. Shows you the infiltration of the insurgency. Full access to U.S. bases. So as bad as you think it is, and as bad as some of the bombings that we see on the news are, could be a lot worse. These guys, when you find out how much access they have. Manning a checkpoint. You don't have a right not to shoot. You're being trusted by everyone behind you. There's a single point of failure. They have 3 seconds to react to oncoming cars. I shot at the ground, 1 shot in the grill, and then you shoot the driver. So put yourself in the position, again, both of these are victims, the soldiers and the people that are being forced to fight. So put yourself in the position of that soldier. If I was manning a checkpoint, I could have my ideas about peace, I got my ideas about this and that. Well, first of all, I wouldn't be reading the stuff if I was out there. I wouldn't have the time, and I wouldn't have the inclination. I wouldn't want to read the stuff if I was out there. I just want to stay alive and get back home. And you don't want to fail because, again, when you're fighting to save your life and the life of your fellow soldiers. So you do what you have to do. Wake for soldier. Open beams, cigarette smell. So I'm describing the details of a wake that was described probably. I haven't attended a wake for a soldier. Open beams, cigarette smells, dim lights, live music. Drank and talked and danced and laughed. Cried and held each other when need arose. What songs do they listen to? Jukebox? Curtis Lowe? So now I'm thinking of my fictionalized account. Me and my buddy who tried to talk me into the infantry before I got out, we would listen to Leonard Skinner, Curtis Lowe on loop. We'd go camping with his little brother, or we'd go driving, and we'd put that, for some reason, sometimes you get stuck on a song, and we just put it on repeat, and then until everyone's singing it. You listen to it for a couple hours until, not a couple hours, but a good hour. So the 5th, 6th time it comes around, by the time everyone's singing every time it comes around to sing me a song, Curtis Lowe, Curtis Lowe. No, 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 no. I haven't heard that song in years. Curtis Lowe was the finest picker to ever pay the blues. What city are they in? Binghamton, New York? Talk about the economy back home. Have Lieutenant talk about this. His military family. He's a West Point man like his father. Maybe his dad died recently, yet he's still trying to impress him. It didn't make much sense when he was alive. Makes less sense now, but that's life. They reflect on life, Lieutenant and Nick, after making love in that abandoned school. So yeah, I have to make sure that, you know, the gay romance fits his character arc, because I wouldn't want it to seem cheap, because that would be a disservice to the lieutenant. Is such a good character. All of these are such good characters that it has to either feel organic or it's not worth it just to add more drama to the story. I'd rather just have it. The friendship's fine, but but if it fits, you know, this is something where this is why in my, as I start to take my writing career seriously and seek out a publisher and an agent and everything, this is something that an editor would help you with. You let other people read it and let them know who have more years in plotting and putting together works at this stage in the work, at the early construction stage. I would need like mentorship on like whether this is me forcing the issue on someone. I need mentorship of someone I respected their opinion. Children burst in tears when soldiers point weapons in cars, sideswipe vehicles as they speed to avoid IEDs, just to let you know what's the Iraqi perspective of what's going on. Private contractors, 20K hired as shooters, bodyguards. This started pissing me off, is when I have a personal relationship with soldiers and experience, and then I start reading about, you know, more about the soldiers and their experience. And again, I don't talk to the friends I have over there. I don't collect combat stories from them. I collect them from the books I read, but I haven't talked to any of the soldiers I know about what they did over there. And every now and then I get details, but I don't solicit details. But then to read about the private contractors, that kind of like upsets me that they make so much more than the soldiers, and they operate with so much more impunity, and then they create chaos. Capture a security detail from an engineering company with a contract to dispose of explosives. Capture a security detail from an engineering company with a contract. Capture, I think what I mean by capture is describe. Describe a security detail from an engineering company with a contract to dispose of explosives. So a lot of what you'll find in the George Bush Jr. administration is not as blatant cronyism as we're finding in the Trump administration, but it was cronyism. That's how these wars are executed. That's why in that movie, Fahrenheit 9/11, they said bad for Iraqis, good for business. There's a lot of contracts coming out of there, no bid contracts to get people signed on to the war. This is how you're going to make money, this is how you're going to make money. So this is a company that had a no bid contract probably to dispose of explosives, and then they go and they hire their own private security, which aren't operating by the rules of engagement like U.S. forces are, and they're getting paid a lot more because this is the money being shoveled out of the treasury. Why pay soldiers a lot? They're honor bound through that contract they signed to give up their life for their country. Oh man, my throat's hurting. 3 hours of talking is making me lose your voice. 1 minute. Do this. We're good. We good. Hello. Did my voice just get? No, it didn't. We got this. Let's take a 1 minute, 2 minute break. 1 minute. I just got something stuck in my throat. Hello. We're back. It's tough. I've been talking for a lot. 3-4 hour videos every day for a week. That what isn't enough to knock out your vocal cords. I think that's just a little irritation. We're gonna get through this video. This video only has 20 more minutes. Even if I have to talk like this. I want to talk like this, and we're gonna power through this. We're on page 25 of 41. This is a little softer on my vocal cords, and we're going to power through this. Because there's an emotional like reading this straight has an impact, and I feel a certain way when I read it straight. I don't want to take too many breaks. There we go. Because if you take too many breaks, then you lose that. I already, it's 9 hours. I'm not going to remember what I was saying at the very beginning. So the more I can thread this together with like an emotional arc, which is just me talking. It's not whiskey, it's coffee. It's just cold coffee. I needed some liquid, that's all. I just needed to lubricate. So we were talking about security detail. These private contractors who are creating havoc. This is an example. They had a contract to dispose of explosives. They were shooting wildly at Iraqis and U.S. troops. Now, I'm just going to read this, and then afterwards I'm going to determine if it was factual or if this was me fictionalizing factual incidents, because maybe I'm noticing I included some characters in here. So this might be me fictionalizing stuff I'm reading. Sometimes I skip that step where I read, process, and by the time I'm putting down notes, I'm already putting it into the plot. This is a very haphazard. This is me 10 years ago. I'm still trying to figure out my creative process. So even back then, I was even less organized and even less like, this is all just pure emotion and pure impulse and momentum, which is why I burnt out after 41 pages of note-taking and personal life strife. This kid hasn't really made money in his life. Shaz back then, I'm 26, 25, 26. Haven't really proven myself in anything. Business, love, personal experience. Haven't traveled, gone out of the country. Very much my parents' child still. Struggling with me challenging their beliefs. Starting to see flaws in my dad's character I never really saw before, never had to confront before. Flaws in my mom's character. Because a relationship is two people and no one's completely blameless. They both have ways that they could treat each other better. Though he definitely disrespected her at that time. And as his son, I said as much. So we had to have those confrontations, which if you ever had one with your dad, it's our relationship's better for it. We know where each other stand. And I'm in their house right now. Our relationship's great, but it's because we work honestly through this stuff. We don't get counselors, we don't get therapists. We are our own therapists. We have the fights, we have the blow-ups, we have the yelling matches, and then we come back to love as a foundation. In the end, we're all here together. We'd all die for each other. This is our original tribe. They've never failed me in that sense. Which is why I'm here now, because I don't have anywhere else to go. I have let my life unravel while I follow these fragments of my art, figuring out just what the fuck am I doing with my life. So, but back then, I knew even less what the fuck I was doing with my life, because at least now I am confident in the fact that I can find love and I can find money, and I've done these things that if you do them once, you can do them again. So now I feel like I have a little bit of comfort in time to take a step back and take a step back. But back then I don't, so this is a lot more loose. This one I'm just going to read and then we're going to reflect later on. Capture a security detail from an engineering company with a contract to dispose of explosives. They were shooting wildly at Iraqis and U.S. troops. Captured 15 Americans and 3 Iraqi translators. Treat them as regular security detainees. Disarmed. Wear blackout goggles. Shipped 15 Americans and 3 Iraqi translators. They're treated as regular security detainees. Disarmed. Wear blackout goggles. Shipped to detention center to be shipped out of country. Remember, we had black sites. The CIA was operating black sites. So that whole taxi to the, I forgot, there's this documentary about it. But they were shipping people out of the country too to torture. The lieutenant does this, or maybe the captain, because they are causing, Taxi to the Dark Side was the documentary. The lieutenant does this, or maybe the captain, because they are causing trouble in the sector. But they were kicking down to the first sergeant, and he doesn't like the fact that they are gone. One of the reasons he resents the captain. The contractors recognize him, try to pull a favor. They think that the first sergeant will help them in the bind, since he's been on the take. But he kicks one, calls them rich contractors, eggs the soldiers on, taunting them, and rough them up. Show the Iago trait, how he first sizes up the situation, danger posed to him, finds out what the captain wants to do, then sucks up and betrays the guys who are paying him. What services he was providing, letting them break curfew, rob Iraqis, what? Think Shakespearean, motives, etc. Characters reveal themselves in actions. Captain is naive and trusting, the first sergeant serving and greedy. So what was I saying? And I think that's a scene. I was trying to capture a scene. So capture a scene. So capture this scene, Shaz. A security detail from an engineering company with a contract to dispose of explosives. So that's based off of real life. They're shooting wildly at Iraqis and U.S. soldiers. That's based off of real life. My fictional company in command captures 15 Americans who are security contractors and 3 Iraqi translators who are also security contractors. So 18 people working for this private company. So this is my way of introducing private contractors into the story, that aspect of the war. That's a way that you could talk about how much they're getting paid, how they disregarded the rules of engagement and everything like that. So with a story like this, within the plot, you want to put in these other details. Later on, I used this technique in Amnesty. When I wrote Amnesty, which is a short story I'm going to go over in a little bit, I had a lot of politics about NAFTA and how NAFTA affected people in the border towns, a lot of the injustices, and then I fit that into the plot where I can. A little bit's heavy-handed, but it's a way to, again, when I'm realizing about my philosophy of art, is you embed as much reality as you can into it, as much of your values, in order to keep those values alive, to tell you, to use art as a way to keep track of the historic record when the historic record fails us for political reasons. Culturally, we don't have an honest historic record. So I'm trying to put it in the art for posterity. So we want to put the injustice of the private contractors in there and how they were acting. So we were going to ship him out of the country. So we weren't going to ship him to a black site. We were going to ship him out of the country, like kick him out of Iraq, because they were fucking up, and the soldiers caught them fucking up. And so we caught them like we would catch any combatant, and we're like, you done fucked up. We're getting you the fuck out of Iraq. The lieutenant and the captain were the honorable ones in the story. So they're the ones who really don't like that these guys were shooting at us and they weren't practicing the rules of engagement. I don't know if military command actually had the ability to do that to private contractors, and I don't know if actually, this might be all fictionalized. I don't know if I read an account of any of this happening, because it sounds like it would have blown up if it actually happened in real life, if military command captured private contractors and actually put them detained them like this. I would have remembered if I read something like that. They were kicking down to the first sergeant, so that might be like something where like the first sergeant, being the corrupt one in this group, was somehow letting these guys slide. I'd have to research more what was the interaction between private contractors and soldiers, and how the first sergeant in this instance could have enabled these contractors in a real life scenario. So in this scenario, in the fictional scenario, they turned to him knowing he was kicking down, like he was getting some money from whatever they were doing, and he was kind of dirty. And then he called them rich contractors, and this is just characterization of the first sergeant, that you see that he's not loyal to these guys, even though you know that he was doing dirty stuff with them. As soon as he sees that the captain captured them, and the captain wants these guys to pay for their endangering his soldiers and not acting according to the rules of engagement, he immediately lines up with them. And he turns on his ex-friends, and then maybe we have something where they're about to rat him out or something like that, and he shuts them up by like abusing them, but then like explains as like, oh, these guys are rich contractors, fuck them. It's like what what I'm thinking in my mind reading this is like that movie with Mark Wahlberg. What was that movie? Shit. That was such a good movie. It was such a good bad movie. And it has Lou Diamond Phillips in it too. There's all these reasons why Mark Wahlberg has a career, and it's not because he's like Leonardo DiCaprio level actor, but it's because he's like memorable, like these movies where you're just like, fuck, that was a good movie. But it's like it wasn't a good movie like Shakespearean. It wasn't like a good movie like Oscar worthy. It was a good movie like you just remember it, the lines, and when you watch it as a kid, it's a mindless action flick. But as far as mindless action flicks go, it doesn't take itself too seriously. Christina Applegate's in it, Mark Wahlberg's in it, they're hitmen. Lou Diamond Phillips is in it. The Big Hit, was it? Maybe it was The Big Hit. And Lou Diamond Phillips, his friend is about to like rat him out, and he stabs his friend. Like his friend's about to say, like, they're in front of like the mafioso, and his friend's about to say, but you told us to do this or that, and then he stabs his friend before he could say that. So knowing the movies I grew up with, I was probably going for something like that, the private contractors are expecting him to kind of like be leaning on him, but then he turns on his friends, and that's what type of asshole he is. Just goes with, he works the room, whatever the room is. The captain is naive and trusting, so he doesn't realize that the first sergeant was in cahoots with this guy, and the first sergeant's greedy and self-serving. 51. I could do 2 more pages, and then I feel really confident in knocking out the rest of this tomorrow. 3 basic rationales for U.S. intervention. A threat posed by Saddam's WMD. So now this is how we're going to get George Bush Jr. Why did you tell us we were going into Iraq? The threat posed by Saddam's WMD, the nexus between Saddam's government and transnational terrorism, and a need to liberate an oppressed people. So rationales for going in. Threat posed by Saddam, the nexus between Saddam and terrorism, and let's liberate them. So the first 2 are undercut by official findings, and the third by Abu Ghraib and actions in Iraq. So officially, he didn't have WMD, and he didn't have connections to international terrorism. After we've gone in, now there's connections to international terrorism. But this is why once you lose the historic record, you lose the ability to have a rational discussion, and we're just being swung from emotional manipulation to emotional manipulation. Who is slowing down the conversation enough to have an actual deep discussion? Where can that conversation take place if not the internet? We can't have this discussion, 9 hours of discussion over notes I made. We can't have it on a talk show. Joe Rogan doesn't have the attention span to sit down and do stuff like this. And we need to create the discussion ourselves. Soldiers need to, and those who've served, and those who care about those who've served. I think that's what I'm getting out of this practice on these notes, and then I'm going to get back into my autobiography, and we're going to get back to the other things I was doing when I'm getting really emotionally invested in this, but this is one of the most important things in my life, apparently. But there's a contract between soldiers and the United States which is broken, and we need to visit that. Someone needs to have this discussion and reclaim the historic record, and take care of it. We need to take care of the people who served and the people who have been lied to and manipulated for personal profit. The lieutenant commander in the Navy, I have begun to question our motives, not only as a subordinate to a superior seeking justification, but as a U.S. citizen holding my elected leaders responsible. That's the lieutenant commander in the Navy. Who is this guy? We should find him. There's a lot of, I'm not alone. Remember, I'm just a guy reading and putting together a pattern. But there's a lot of people who have impeccable military careers saying this, and I'm just looking for the notes and trying to piece together the pattern. I'm just the asshole with a big mouth, but and trying to establish my authenticity and my sincerity. But if you want to actually seek authority, who have these opinions? Well, let's find this lieutenant commander in the Navy who said, I have begun to question our motivations, not only as subordinate to a superior seeking justification, but as a U.S. citizen holding my elected leaders responsible. Men with honor have long memories. We went to war not realizing how rotten internally our democratic structures have become. Iraq had become a new breeding ground for a fresh generation of tougher, more professional Islamic extremist terrorists. This is long before ISIS. This is in my notes. What is the definition of criminal negligence and involuntary manslaughter? So my mind's already starting to work on the criminal case we can take against this administration. This is why Obama pissed me off so much. Because when he said we're not looking backwards, it's like, did this guy even read into, does he even know what happened in Iraq? Or did he just want to become the first black president? Former Defense Secretary General, to stop abuses and mistakes by rank and file, heads must roll at a high level. The best way to keep foot soldiers honest is to make sure their command know that they themselves will be held responsible for any breach of honor. Show the lawlessness that happens in Iraq and the spreading into our own police state here at home. So the last part is me telling myself, like, I have to connect the lawlessness in Iraq to our loss of freedoms at home. We're losing this battle. We've been losing this battle. I'm just trying to draw a line in the sand. I'm trying to stop it, stop the bleeding. And maybe that's all I am, a tourniquet. Like, we're gonna get better, and we don't have to, we don't know how big of a task is ahead of us, but I'm at least starting. I'm trying to start. I'm trying to, ahead of 2020, start the discussion we should be having. So the former Defense Secretary General, a high-ranking official, to stop abuses and mistakes by rank and file, heads must roll at a high level. If you disagree with that, go argue with him. I'm just the messenger. All of this stuff, I'm just the messenger. Any opinion I have is about the art, and any facts I have is drawn from, accounts. So if you have disagreements with the facts, go argue with the sources. I'm documenting my sources. If you have disagreements with the art, then we can talk about art. As former soldiers, we knew that you don't have this kind of pervasive attitudes unless you've condoned it. And whether you did it explicitly or not is irrelevant. So within this hurricane of confusion in Iraq, of injustice, you still have objective, honest, honorable people standing up for rationality. And that's why we should, and that's how we're going to end this. Page 26. 2 more hours at most on this. So I feel good about this. Today we did a good chunk. But this is let's leave it on a positive note, because we've had a lot of negativity and a little bit of hoarseness and losing a voice scare. But in the midst of so much calamity, confusion, injustice, you still have rational, honorable people for the historic record. And I found one. And this guy says, as former soldiers, we knew that you don't have this kind of pervasive attitude unless you've condoned it. And whether you did it explicitly or not is irrelevant. So that's where I'm building my argument for the case against war criminals. Whether they did it explicitly or not, and I have plenty of evidence they did it explicitly. We have Bush's lawyers, John Woo was his name, or John, I don't know, the Asian guy, but like, these guys traveled around law colleges around the United States condoning their policy for torture. And so they not only set policy within the Bush administration, but now they've been traveling around our institutions where we establish our body of law, and where we train future legal professionals to make sure they inculcate future generations to paper over their past. This isn't just a battle that happened in Iraq or happened culturally when we waged this war. It's been happening ever since to justify their decisions, make sure they keep their asses out of jail. And we have witnesses back then, and we still, I bet, have witnesses now who have been remembering and have been documenting the historic record. We just do not have a place for them to have that discussion. So I'm not the authority. I'm merely setting the table for the discussion, and then I'm going to invite those guys. And I bet you anything, once we start the discussion, there's a lot of people who are going to speak on this, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say. Until next time.